From day one, this Republican majority has put Medicare on the chopping block, and the Boehner proposal would decimate Medicare as we know it, and Medicaid and Social Security.
I'd like to yield to any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who will tell me where in the Boehner bill it says that we want to cut Medicare, Social Security, or any of the other items that they continue to attack. I'd happy to yield to anyone who can point to me where in the Boehner bill it says that, and I'm happy to yield to anyone.
If you look at the Boehner proposal, it says we got to cut $1.8 trillion. So the only other way to get it mathematically is to start slashing Medicare and to start going after Social Security.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. That was just a taste of what happened on Saturday on the House floor. You're listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction. Delighted you're with us. 800-876-4123. The Of the I Zing tour continues, bringing me to the Twin Cities area, broadcasting here at our great affiliate, AM 1570. The family came with me to Minnesota, as we usually travel every year to Minnesota. I just love it here. Love the people. It's crazy politics in Minnesota. I can't follow it. I mean, how do you have a state that elects Mark Dayton as governor, one of the most liberal guys who ever was in the U.S. Senate, as governor, and then Jesse Ventura, then it was Al Franken, and then on the other side you have Michele Bachmann, who's actually someone who makes sense on these issues. I don't understand. It's a bipolar disorder in Minnesota, but I love you all, and I love your lake. So I'm delighted to be here. And we're going to continue this conversation. The left is in a complete panic and a meltdown. All you need to do is go to the left-wing blogs to feel better about this debt deal. Basically, the line is that conservatism will be the governing philosophy over the next several years, given how this has gone down. The Daily Beast saying that. And then others saying a complete sellout by President Obama to conservatives. The president gives it all away. Michael Tomasky writes, and Peter Beinart over at the New Republic, how the Tea Party won the debt deal. Eleanor Clift, she's always a reasonable voice, the Tea Party's debt triumph. Joining us now, and I'm delighted she's with us. Is she on already? Michele Bachmann? Oh, she's going to be on in just a moment. So we'll get to her. She's going to here she is. Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, of course, a candidate for the presidency. And she has been watching what's going on with this conversation about reducing spending and this debt deal. And she joins us now. And Congresswoman, I don't even know where you're calling from. Are you in Washington? I'm not sure where you are.
I just landed from Iowa. I spent yesterday in Iowa talking to people all across the state, and I just literally landed here right now. We have the Republican House conference meeting at 12:15 to 1:15, where we'll go over the finer details on this deal before it gets voted on later today.
Here's what the Wall Street Journal says about this ultimate framework, and the details are still emerging. But the Tea Partiers pride themselves on adhering to the Constitution, which was intended, as written, to make political change difficult. Yet in this deal, they force both parties to make the biggest spending cuts in 15 years, with more cuts likely next year. The U.S. is engaged in an epic debate over the size and scope of government that will play out over several years in the most important battles to come in the election of 2012. Tea Partiers will do more for their cause by applauding this victory and working toward the next, rather than diminishing what they've accomplished because it didn't solve every fiscal problem in one impossible swoop. What's your reaction to that, Congresswoman?
Well, I appreciate the fact that the Wall Street Journal recognizes the importance of the Tea Party in this conversation because, as President Obama said in his speech, he said that raising the debt ceiling is routine. That's the problem in Washington, D.C. We're routinely spending more money than what we're taking in. And the Tea Party brought this debate to the fore. So even though it was painful, even though it was difficult, I applaud the Tea Party because they're centered on the fact that we are taxed enough already, that government shouldn't spend more than what it brings in, and that, yes, we should act within the bounds of the Constitution. I think that's tremendous. They also point to the fact that raising the debt ceiling anywhere between another $2.1 and $2.4 trillion will be injurious to economic recovery. Now, I know that the Wall Street Journal and I, the editorial board, probably diverge on the outcome of whether or not passage of this bill is a good thing, but we do agree on the fact that this is a very good debate we're having centering on spending, and unfortunately, that hasn't been solved.
But Congresswoman, look, you know I'm a huge fan of yours and a big supporter, and I know you're running for president, and I know everybody wants to seem more pure than the next person, and I'm the purest of them all, and now Mitt Romney's come out against the deal. I'm sure you saw that, and others who are running for president. But do you not agree that this debt ceiling issue was a political hostage that the GOP, as the Wall Street Journal wrote, could never afford to shoot? Right, that was no matter how much all of us want immediately, that when you only run one house of Congress and you don't have the presidency, that you're not going to get everything you want in one wave of the wand. It's just not going to happen. Don't you agree with that?
Well, first of all, what I want to say is I think one thing people know about me is that I act from core principles. And I am not coming to the conclusion that I did on the debt ceiling based upon running for the presidency of the United States. I came to this conclusion both as someone who has studied the economy, as a former federal tax lawyer, and my husband and I also own and operate a small business. We get that. But also, I have been all across the country. And, Laura, I will tell you, it's important that we as representatives reflect the will of the people. And people are not saying to me, Michele, vote to raise the debt ceiling. In fact, it's just the opposite. People have been saying to me over and over again, spending this kind of money is near insanity. And they're saying somebody has got to stand up and say no. We can't.
But, Congresswoman, what deal could you have gotten? I know, but politics is also about what's possible.
Sure.
I mean, possible for the moment. So you and I agree on the ultimate goal, 100% in agreement on where we need to go here. There's no doubt about it. I mean, this is long overdue. We should have been doing this years ago. I was complaining about the spending during the Bush administration when a lot of Republicans were giving the blank check to him on a whole bunch of issues, and I was persona non grata back then. But given what we could do now, not what we want ultimately, but the real limits of our power when we only have a majority in one house, how is it that you can't say that this is actually ultimately a good thing? Not everything, but it's a good thing and a good step forward. That I don't understand. I just still don't get it.
Well, Laura, the reason why I can say that is because ultimately what may seem a short-term solution, in my mind, is going to guarantee a long-term financial ruin for the country.
So John Boehner's responsible for long-term financial ruin of the country. I want to be very clear on this because you said something that, to me, is something quite startling. Boehner and McConnell are guaranteeing the long-term injury to the country. They're guaranteeing it.
I would say that this has been the fault of President Obama because he knew that this was about to come. In February, he presented a budget that added another $1.5 trillion to the deficit in addition to the $1 trillion stimulus and all the other spending. He owns that spending. We're dealing with this crisis today because he owned that spending. And so is the response that we have to have a new normal of this insane, completely unsustainable level of spending? Because the problem is today. The problem isn't 5 years from now. The problem is today. Today is when we have to insist on prioritizing because we can't keep this up. The problem will be even worse, Laura, when we revisit this next year. Far worse. And remember what we're talking about. We take in $2.2
So they're not doing
trillion.
their job, though. Again, Congressman, it's easy to say this, but you got to go to the logical conclusion. What you're saying then is that McConnell and Boehner did not do their jobs.
What I'm saying is that I, together with Steve King and Louis Gohmert, put forward a plan that would have taken this issue of destroying the full faith and credit off the table. You pay the interest on the debt, you pay the military, and then after that, you deal with your spending priorities.
Okay, you didn't get enough support for it. Congresswoman, you didn't get enough support for it, right?
That doesn't mean that I give my support for this deal. I think my opinion is we're going to now give the president almost $1 trillion, and then come Christmas time, he'll get potentially, we'll find out what the final numbers were, potentially upwards of another, in excess of $1 trillion, maybe as high as another $1.8 trillion. But that's on top of the other $2.2 trillion spending that we do. So this isn't just 2.4 or 2.8 trillion worth of spending, we have the full budget, which is another 2.2 trillion. I mean, these numbers, this is like saying we embrace being Greece. I don't.
Right, but we have $14 trillion of debt, Congresswoman. You know that we can't, we have a $4 trillion budget, annual budget. We have $14 trillion in debt. So we're not going to be in a position immediately to cut 40% of government in one fell swoop. No one will stand for that. No one would support that, I don't think, because the second, grandma didn't get her check, that's when, every moderate Republican is just going to say, no, we've got to raise this debt ceiling and forget about tying anything to it. That was always the Damocles sword hanging over this, was it not? I mean, the debt ceiling was going to be increased.
Well, I'll tell you, this is my impetus why, as nominee of the Republican Party, I will work tirelessly to elect 13 titanium-spine senators to join me so we can have 60 senators who will vote the conservative line and a conservative House of Representatives. Then we're going to actually deal with this issue of tackling the spending and the debt. Because now we've kicked the can down the road for one more year, which means the problem will even be more difficult when we get to 2013.
So just so I'm clear, again, Boehner and McConnell have kicked the can down the road and have done something in this final framework that is going to be terribly injurious to the United States of America.
I think adding an additional $2.8 trillion, potentially, however much this final number is, adding that much more to the debt ceiling is injurious to the economy and is injurious to economic growth because this will presage the need for increased taxes. How else do we do it? Either you print money that has no value behind it.
Well, we've cut the spending cuts are going right, but the spending cuts are going to. But the spending cuts, then you just don't believe the spending cuts are ever going to happen, right? You don't believe those are ever going to happen.
I believe we have to have spending cuts, but let's face it, we've had 17 Rodney Dangerfield-type commissions so far. They haven't. This
isn't a commission, though. These are 3 senators and 3 congressmen from both sides. I mean, again, you and I agree that this is not. I mean, if we could snap our fingers and have this dealt with right away, that would be preferable here. But Congressman, before we let you go, were you there on the House floor on Saturday when this was going down?
Yes, I was there on Saturday.
Yeah, because I missed your statement, and I kept watching C-SPAN and going, I want to hear Bachmann. I want to hear what she says.
It was there. Go find it on YouTube.
No, I was hearing, Congresswoman, everyone screaming about Medicare and Medicaid and how Republicans were going to destroy Grandma. And it was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. We appreciate. No, it was embarrassing. But we appreciate so much you're joining us. And look, everybody has this goal of restoring America's preeminence economically. And we can have disagreements on strategy. But in the end, the conservative way is the only way. And Congressman, we really appreciate your voice out there. Thanks so much.
Hey, you're so great. Thanks, Laura. Bye-bye.
All right. We're going to take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. A lot more to get to. Don't even think about touching that dial. Stay with us.
The Laura Ingraham Show.